Looking back on this interview, I realized I didn't do a very good job at giving context and actually explaining what the conversation was about. The reason for this is very simple. I was slightly offended by Charles Black's content. And so, to give you some much needed context for this conversation, here it goes. Charles Black used to be an average shy guy, not a popular kid, but not the unpopular one either. Basically like you and me. But fast forwarding a bit, he eventually started a YouTube channel that he went by the name of Don of Desire, where he taught men how to pleasure women and improve their own sex life. This was because he realized there was a huge missing part in the education we are currently given, specifically in sex education. Men aren't taught how to pleasure women in school, and so Charles took it upon himself to do so. Now the content he produces is genuinely helpful, however quite controversial, of course, since it is after all teaching sex. So when I found out about Charles and his Dawn of Desire method, as he calls it, I personally didn't really like the way it was marketed. It gave me a feeling of objectifying women to nothing more than sex tools. What I do realize, however, afterwards, while editing this episode, is that this actually isn't the case at all, but instead that I personally simply isn't the target audience of his content. So with that said, I hope I have given you a little bit of context as to what this conversation is about and why I might seem slightly upset. And so enjoy the conversation with Charles Black. Charles Black is a leading sex coach who ran the YouTube channel Dawn of Desire, which was followed by over 300,000 men and women and had over 40 million views, until it was recently shut down by YouTube with no warning or reason. He publishes content on dawnofdesire.com, teaching men how to improve their sex lives and by extension their relationships. He has written several books and courses, including the Dawn of Desire method, Dirty Talk Mastery, and many more, which together have sold thousands of copies to individuals around the world. And so that's quite an introduction, and I have to say, welcome.
Thank you very much. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing very good.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And excited to get down and dirty. But before we do that, I have my assumptions of who you are, but I would love to know who you say. Who are you?
Well, as you say, I mean, that's a very open question. So I'm many different things. Professionally, I am, as you say, a sex coach. I focus on helping people improve their relationships through not only fixing problems in the bedroom, but taking it further than that, exploring how much you can improve a relationship through the bedroom, through pleasuring your partner more and proper communication in the bedroom and things like that. Outside of that, I mean, I'm a happy guy trying to do a little bit of good, build a business, live life, etc.
Sounds like a good life. And I like you say, it's a very open question, but I do ask it like that because I want it to be very open, because oftentimes what I've realized is if I ask directly, what do you do for a living, like what is your business, the answers tend to be quite boring. And so I want, it's interesting to listen to what the person decides to say when I ask who they are.
Sure.
And so, for example, you now decided to go with your business, what you do professionally. And so, it's interesting to see how a person like to define themselves. But so before we get into the professional you, I want to know, this is another very open question too, but how did you grow up? How was your, family life? Did you have did you grow up in like an average middle class family, or did you? How was your circumstance?
I mean, we could say an unremarkable childhood. It was good. It was nice. I had maybe lower middle class, something like that. My parents worked. My dad worked a manual job. My mum worked yeah, she did different things throughout my life. Yeah,
Yeah.
in school I was happy but goofy kid.
Happy but goofy.
Yeah.
So sounds like you had a, when you say average, it sounds more like you had a good childhood. Because
Yeah, it was
usually,
good for sure.
because usually
Yeah.
when it's good, there's not really, from your own perspective, there's not really much to say. Although I'm sure there
Yeah,
is,
that's good.
but
Yeah.
we'll try to get deeper into that. So you said you have an average childhood. Did you have, for example, plenty of friends? How did you? We spoke briefly before we started recording. You enjoy the outdoors and seem to be very interested in the animals over here in Sweden. No, have you always had an interest for sort of the outdoors, or have you, growing up, have a lot of friends, or were you kind of the lone wolf, so to speak?
I was, how do we say? Let's say I was popular but transient. I would probably describe it. I was friends with everybody, but I would bop around, hang around with a lot of different groups. I wasn't like, I was certainly not a ladies' man in that sense. Yeah, but I was happy. I was sort of friends with everyone, but yeah, like I said, I would just bounce around, and but my interest in the outdoors, that's not a particular. It sort of is, but it's not a massive interest of mine. I'm just very fascinated by everything.
Right. And so you say you weren't the like the player kind of guy growing up, but so your business now is very much I don't want to call it like player business, but very focused on sexuality and relationships and such. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so how did you go from that kid who wasn't really that into wasn't the ladies person, so to speak? How did you transition from that to what you're now?
Sure. So when I was around 20 years old, I had a girlfriend, and we weren't engaged, but we were basically engaged. We thought that we were going to marry each other, end up together, this sort of thing. And but around, I think I was around 20. It's hard to recall now. It was a long time ago. We'd hit a rough patch, and I wanted to be with this girl. I loved her. She was, smart, kind, intelligent, beautiful, but things were going very downhill, and especially our sex life. Our sex life was going very downhill, and I was desperate to make things work. I was trying everything that I could think of at the time. I didn't know a lot. I was green and naive, and I was taking her out to restaurants. I was trying to spoil her. Just everything I could think of, and it was just like trying to think of a metaphor on the spot, but it just wasn't working. It was like sand slipping through my fingers. There you go. There's a good metaphor.
Right.
Like the more I tried, the worse things got, and it culminated in I saved up a load of money, and I took her away to a crazy hotel for a weekend to try, I've got to do something to make it work. And when we got there, it felt like it worked. Like, she was really, really excited, just all over me again, like she used to be when we first got together. And more than anything, I felt relief. I'm like, oh, yes. And things were great. But then that first night, after we'd had fun together and a great meal, etc., we went to bed and we started doing the deed. And as soon as we started, like, that excitement just vanished. Like everything I'd done, it was just crumbling before me. Just the longer the sex went on, she was just losing interest. And then to make, like, just comically, in the next room, we hear these outrageous, animalistic porn star screams of another woman. And it was just like, come on, what?
Right.
And it was just such a contrast between what was happening with us. And she even made a remark like, well, at least it sounds like she's having a good time, which was just like a knife in the heart. The night was a disaster after that. And shortly after, she broke up with me. And it was heartbreaking. It was terrible. But at the same time, it lit a fire under me. Like, I was like, I am never letting this happen to me again. I've just got to figure this stuff out. And I just became a man possessed, and I was reading every study I could get my hands on. I was going to seminars. I was reading books. I was talking to experts, just anything I could do on sex and relationships to just sort of figure out where I went wrong and figure out what I should have been doing, because I was clueless. I just didn't understand. I was trying so hard and nothing I was doing was working, and I felt so powerless. And yeah, and then that obsession has slowly led me to where I am today, where I did figure it out. And I did figure out some things. I'm like, that were mind blowing. And then I told some guys to begin with, just friends. And then they were like, oh, wow, this is crazy how like women are loving this. Like my relationship is improving, etc. And then it expanded from there to the point where I started the YouTube channel, and then that grew. People loved that. And and now we're here.
Right. And this relationship, was that your first like harsh breakup?
First serious. Yeah, it was my first serious relationship, like pretty much at all. I mean, I'd had a few that, kid stuff, like a few weeks here and there, and but nothing very serious.
Right. So, but how did you, I mean, I'm sure it must have been completely heartbreaking, of course, like any kind of breakup. How did you deal with that? You said you read up and wanted to improve yourself, but apart from that, how did you deal with it personally?
I mean, it was just time, it just hurt, and there wasn't that much I could do. It felt like, and so I just focused on improving, and I just let the feelings be what they were, and over time they got better.
Right. And so reading about you after that breakup, reading up and trying to educate yourself on relationship and such, that to me is a great thing. Of course, you want to improve, and that's really wonderful, because if you don't improve, that's gonna be really bad. But I personally sort of getting into what you're doing now. You're educating other people essentially in the same spot that you were at that time. Do you think people are sort of missing out on some important parts when they only, for example, watch your videos or read about things and similar sort of educations, instead of actually just experiencing it themselves and going through those hard parts and those hard patches, and just really struggling, and then eventually after 10, 15, 30 breakups or harsh wake-up calls, eventually improving. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I think it would be nice if things worked that way. But sadly, I think most men and women, they're not figuring this stuff out through their life, and they're not taught this stuff. Basic things, they just don't know. I mean, we could talk about sex, or we could talk about the relationship stuff, but like, men aren't taught how to, say, satisfy a woman at school. You're taught about the dangers of sex, but you never learn. Your parents aren't probably teaching you how they're definitely not teaching you how to stimulate a clitoris,
right?
And you're not learning that in school either. And so, let's say guys, for example, because that is mostly who I focus on, they're getting their education in sex from porn, and you couldn't get a worse education. You couldn't get a worse idea of how to approach sex than through the most common porn you see on the internet these days. And so, and you just look at most relationships and they're failing at a large rate. Marriages are failing at a large rate, and they don't have to. If people knew how to communicate, if they knew how to make each other happy and to satisfy each other, these things are just so unnecessarily. And you can take any small sample of women and you can speak to them for 5 minutes. You can ask them about their experience with the men they've had in the bedroom, and you can ask, do they know how to satisfy them? Do they know how to approach sex? Are they bringing them pleasure? Are they giving them orgasms? And you're almost always, the answer from women is going to be no. And not only are men unaware of how to approach these things, now I'm talking about the bedroom, but men have a very big ego surrounding this thing, and they don't like to be challenged, in the sense that maybe they don't know what they're doing here. This is something that men really want to feel, that they are the best in that sense. So it's not true that although it would be nice that if men reach these conclusions on their own, it's not happening.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think that people, or men especially, aren't understanding these things or being taught these things? What do you think that is?
Well, it's a very touchy subject, as I said. I mean, where are you going to teach it? Like, are you going to teach men how to stimulate a clitoris in school, or how to lick pussy? Like, I don't know if that would ever happen. And when the thing about sex is, if you're going to give good advice on sex, it's about the most politically incorrect subject you could ever delve into. If you want to give good advice, it's going to upset people. It's going to offend people. And so you're not going to be able to teach this stuff anywhere, the good stuff.
And so looking through your website and your profiles, there's what I understand, there's a lot of focus on the man, since that's what you're teaching. Your brand seemed to be too focused on the men's side.
Right.
Well, my personal belief is that a relationship, especially a sexual relationship, is obviously very much two-sided, since for sex to happen, it's required for two people to engage. So do you think you're missing the part of the woman's side, or
absolutely?
Why? And why do you focus on the men's part?
Well, I mean, I just started somewhere. I actually have a book written for women on their side, but it's not released yet. But the fact is, often men, especially in longer term relationships, it gets to the point where they are unsatisfied with the sexual situation. And, if they want to fix that, if they want an improved sex life, they have to take on the responsibility of making it happen. And the thing is, once they take my advice and they start giving, and they start really, really pleasuring the woman and making her super satisfied and fulfilled, she is going to reciprocate almost always, like close to universal. Once you start giving her so much and bringing her to those high heights, she will reciprocate. So you don't have to worry in that sense. It's very rarely going to end up one-sided. You just need to take the initiative if that's what you want.
Right.
And if that's not what you want, then you're not going to find my content anyway.
No, of course. And so would you say that you found a void that where there was a need to for content and for education?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then you went ahead and filled that void.
Yeah. Well, no, I would say I got lucky, really, because it was like, because that wasn't my intention when I started out, because I was trying to solve this problem for myself. I was trying to figure this out for myself. And then I just so happened to stumble into something that was a problem for all of these men and women around the world. And, you know, it was quite an accident, really.
Mm-hmm. So you didn't go into this with the purpose of starting an actual business and being something that you could make a living from?
No, exactly. I used to be a professional poker player. And while I was studying all this stuff myself, you know, like I said, like I sort of figured it out. I sort of got going. I was getting like, I just started seeing these results, and then I would just tell some close friends and they were like, wow. And then it just expanded.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so when did you, like, what was your thoughts for the very first video that you made? Because I assume the YouTube channel was the first step. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, no, because I used to teach guys one-on-one.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I expanded into YouTube.
Right.
And but it was funny because I was totally unknown when I began. Right. And it was actually a friend of mine who had a different business on YouTube, and I'd been teaching these guys one-on-one while still making my main income from poker. And he came up to me and he said, man, you got to put this stuff out there. This is good. Right. And I had no faith in myself at that point, actually. I'm like, I can't do that, man. He's like, don't worry about it. I know what I'm talking about. And I knew he's a smart guy, so I knew he knew what he was talking about. And he's like, just put the videos out there and people will start to watch your content. People will like you. I'm like, okay. But I started putting out these videos on YouTube, and like at the beginning, I'm just this self-professed sex coach. Mm-hmm. And these videos I'm putting out a video every day at the beginning. These videos are getting like 10, 20 views. And I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Just put, this is embarrassing. Like the self-professed sex master gets 20 views.
Exactly.
Yeah. But then I said it to my friend. He was like, trust me, just be consistent. People need to hear what you're putting out. So I'm like, okay. And so I just kept being consistent, and I just kept putting videos out every day. And then I remember I put out one video on how to give a woman oral sex, and it just absolutely exploded. It just, like, I went from getting, like I said, 10, 20 views a video, 1 subscriber a day, to, you know, 5,000 views in a few days. And then that video went on to 100,000 views, then 1 million, then 2 million, then 3 million. And that was the first big video that I ever made. Right. And then it just kept growing. It just kept growing.
That's amazing. That's quite a story. Yeah. And because I mean, I'm sure most people listening at some point have probably dreamt of having being a public figure, a YouTuber, right, an influencer, or whatever. But so it takes a lot of courage. Like you said, you didn't feel comfortable, from my understanding, doing it at first.
No. If you ever saw one of my like first videos, I'm just so awkward on camera. I remember it took me like 50 takes to get this basic 2-minute video, just super awkward.
And so, but despite that, you still went ahead and did these things. What was it in your mind that still said that I need to create this?
Well, I had seen the results for myself, and I had seen the results for the guys that I was teaching one-on-one. And so I knew that I could help people. So I had that in my mind. And then I had the faith from my friend, who was just saying, trust me. But I trusted him more than I trusted myself. That was the thing. He is one of the smartest guys I know. And I just knew he knew what he was talking about. So it was less about me. It was more about what I'd seen that I'd taught my clients and what he was telling me. So I just trusted in him and just stayed consistent. And like I said, I went to him a couple of times. I'm like, I don't know, man. And he's like, keep going. I'm like, okay.
So this support system of your, sounds like a special friend of yours.
Yeah.
Would you be able to have done what you have done without the support of that?
No, I would probably not have done it. I might have done it, but I probably would have quit before I ever hit those viral videos and got that. And then I started seeing in the comments of the YouTube videos, like men were saying like, I put this into practice and holy shit, I can't believe what happened. And then the women in the comments were like, this is exactly this guy's saying like what I've wanted and I'm not receiving. And then I'm like, okay, cool. This is good.
Right. And sort of jumping from one thing to another. You teaching, educating on sex and relationships. What is the most common problem that you see in your clients?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question. So it depends at what level guys are coming in, of course. So the most common, although this is becoming much more mainstream now, and is becoming less of a problem, is men thinking about the women enjoy sex in the same way they do, because men like things fast. On average, they like things fast. They like things graphic. They like they like wild stuff. And so they really want to get to the action quick, and they really want to have sex. But for women, for the majority of women, actually, it's much more about the build-up. It's much more about the foreplay, and they're going to receive a lot more pleasure from men if the men put the focus on the clitoris than on penetrative, whether that be with their penis or with their fingers. Most women find it tricky to orgasm from penetrative sex, but the majority of women are able to orgasm very consistently, close to every single time, from good clitoral stimulation. So that's sort of the first step men need to take, sort of understanding the importance of the clitoris and the importance of foreplay. I mean, realistically, if you want to show a lady a good time in the bedroom, you should really give her at least 20 minutes of foreplay every time, and bring her to an orgasm every time before you even have sex. Once men understand that, they learn about the clitoris, and they're like, oh my goodness, I have the secret cheat code. I can just do this and then she's happy every time. But then the problem becomes that men still rush it. So if we broke down sex into like undressing or sort of flirtation beforehand, then undressing a woman, then taking her clothes off, then taking her lingerie off, and then bringing her to an orgasm, and then sex, men rush through every single one of those stages. That's the most common problem. And that you're robbing a woman, because she likes the build up, she likes the tension. And the more you stretch out each of those phases, let's call them, the better time you're going to give your partner. The more turned on she's going to be, the more consistently she's going to orgasm, and the more intense those orgasms are going to be.
And looking on your website once again, there is if you looked at the document I sent you beforehand, there's there's a lot of skepticism from my side on
Sure.
on what you're teaching.
Sure.
For example, I read through the testimonials, some of them,
Yeah.
and I can't help but cringe when I read them.
Okay.
I'm not trying to tear apart what you're doing, but this is just my
Sure.
personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
For example, this one testimonial read something along the likes of like the relationship were going downhill, it was horrible, no sex, or like barely any sex. And then I found your teachings and education, and now I'm getting blowjobs every single day. My wife is home cooking with the food ready when I get home, and all these different things, and shopping. She's home shopping for sex toys while I go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And me reading that makes me feel like you're kind of objectifying women
Sure.
in the way that the only purpose to know a woman or to have a woman is sex. What would you say to my opinion on that?
I would say, sure, it can be taken that way.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the stuff, the results that you're going to read from my clients can be seen as offensive. And a lot of the stuff I write could be seen as offensive. And I do write offensive things. And sometimes when I'm writing, I'm trying to be provocative. Sometimes when I'm writing, I'm trying to be funny. Mm-hmm. And, you know, especially if you look at my sales pages, like, I am trying to be provocative in that sense, and I do want to snap people out of the things, out of the when they're reading it, like, what the hell? And you know, that is a result that a man got, but that is not the only results that men get. And when I am teaching men, my goal is to produce a relationship where both of the partners are very happy and fulfilled. And I am not teaching gun to the head methods. I'm not teaching men how to twist their woman's arm into making them do things that they don't want to do. I'm teaching men how to make their partners so happy that they can't wait to find a way to reciprocate that pleasure in the relationships by making their man happy. And sometimes for the man, the thing that is going to make him happy is a partner that gives blowjobs and cooks. And if that's what makes him happy, that's what makes him happy. But he is only going to get those things by making the woman so happy and fulfilled that she is excited to return the favor in a way that whatever that means for the man. And that in that instance, that is what that man wanted. And she excitedly reciprocated in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if just because I don't believe that the relationship should be that way doesn't mean that another person does not think that it should be that way. And so, like you said, the sales pages are very provocative. They're very straight to the point. And would you say, why is that basically? Why is it that you try to be so provocative? I mean, it is by essence, of course, a provocative subject, and it's difficult to talk about it at all without being provocative. But continuing on my opinion and my views, would you say that you're by writing in the way that you are writing, would you say that you're speaking to the, I guess, insecurities of the man that you're selling it to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, I talk about the insecurities. I talk about the the problems that are going to arise from not handling this area of your life, like a personal trainer is going to talk about the problems that are going to arise if you don't get your body into a good condition. And I want to highlight those insecurities, and I want to pour a little bit of salt in the wound in that sense, because these consequences are real, and the grass is greener on the other side. Like, what I'm teaching gets the results that I'm talking about. And I want guys to take the leap and delve into this information, because one thing you need to understand is that I'm walking a tightrope with no safety net. I put this content out there and I sell it, and everything I put out there, I offer basically a 90-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee. So I am either going to improve men's lives in this way, or I'm going to go out of business and I'm not going to eat. So if I was pouring salt on the wound and then selling people snake oil, that would be one thing. That would be terrible. But I'm getting the guys results because I'm offering this guarantee. Even if someone wants to con me, even if they want to take my product and get the refund, they can do it. And even with all that, I have a very small refund rate within that 90-day guarantee. And then some percentage of that refund rate is, say, people taking advantage of the offer. Some percentage of that refund rate is guys who bought it and then changed their mind. They don't want to look at it. Fine. Some percentage of that, guys, is the guys that took my contents, applied it, and they didn't get the results. And then I will either help them further or I just give them their money back, and it's okay. And and if you take into account all of that and the fact that the refund rate is small to begin with, less than 5%, then, you know, I don't mind pouring that salt in the wound at all.
No.
Because I know I can deliver the goods.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Continuing from that, I want to know how, in your personal opinion, how should a relationship between I was gonna say man and woman, but man and woman too, look like in terms of balance between doing certain things and working and pleasure, sex, food, whatever. How should a relationship look like in your opinion? It's a very open question, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I am for relationships where both partners are happy and fulfilled. And whatever that means outside of the bedroom it's up to them, and is really no interest of mine. It's totally for them to decide. You know, when it comes to who should cook or do what in the kitchen, I don't know. Like, the only time I'm a sex coach, the only time I'm interested in what they're doing in the kitchen is if someone's getting bent over and shown a good time. And the only who I don't care who's holding the spatula unless they're looking for creative ways to include it in the bedroom.
Right. Yeah, that's it makes sense. What you're teaching isn't how a relationship should be, just how to make it better. Yeah. And it makes me happy to hear that, because you dismantle my previous assumption of who you were.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear it. Well, I mean, when I saw the document, I could think, oh man, this guy thinks I'm he's got probably a strong opinion of me right now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's natural to only seeing,
like I said, I'm provocative.
Exactly. And only seeing, especially an online profile of a person, of a human being, can be very wrong, and it can make a very false impression of who a person is. And so and so your brand being so provocative, that obviously stirs some emotions, and that's speaking,
which is what I want.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's obviously working, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. That's the very reason I'm speaking to you and individuals like you, because I want to provide a conversation with people that I initially don't necessarily agree with, and I don't always have to agree with it with the person after the conversation, but still we've found some kind of common ground and had a conversation about it, and that's the wonderful thing. Great. Yeah. But so continuing off on your brand, I'm looking at the time here. I'm seeing we only have 10 minutes to go. But what does your general customer base look like in terms of age and everything?
So when I was on YouTube, my viewership, my demographic breakdown was roughly 60% men and 40% women, with the age focus was between 20 and 40, I would say. That was the concentration of the majority of viewers. For people who take my courses, I would say it's roughly 40% single men, roughly 40% married men or men in longer term relationships, and somewhere between 10 to 20% women who want to improve they want to help their man, give him a direction to go in, to improve things that way.
You teach sex and teach how to improve the sex life of people. How important do you think sex is in a relationship? And I'm sure, obviously, the answers can vary a lot, but in your opinion, how important is it?
Well, so I would break down. I'll say a few things on that. You know, a good relationship is sort of like a jigsaw puzzle, and there are many different pieces that make up that jigsaw puzzle. And a great relationship, one of those crucial pieces is your sex life. And then to move on from that, there's a saying some people say, which is like, when the sex is bad, it is 80% of the relationship, because it's such a focus, because it's a problem. When the sex is good, it's 20% of the relationship, because it takes it away as a focus. And it's a reasonable thing to say, but for those people, that's talking about decent sex. And what I like to explore is really how far you can go with sex, and how the heights that you can reach with it. Because, you know, sex, when you really start exploring the interesting side of it, to me, the kinks, the fantasies, this sort of thing, then you are really, really, really building up a lot of trust between two partners. And you have to have very good communication to explore those sensitive areas, which most people don't even delve into. And the other thing about great sex is that it never really stops, and it never really begins. That there should be little flirts and little teases through the day. It shouldn't be like, okay, now we're kissing. This is the kissing part, and then we move on to the foreplay, and then that is the sex over. It should be this gray zone that blurs in intensity throughout the time you're together. And when you look at it that way, you're constantly improving your communication with your partner, and you're increasing that tension and that love and the attraction between the two of you. So if you take it seriously, of course, it's not the only aspect of a relationship worth focusing on, but it can bring so much more closeness, togetherness, love, attraction, and trust than almost anyone realizes.
Once again, looking at the times, to end this on a positive note, like you said, communicating about sex and sexuality in the relationship is can be very difficult for a lot of people. And so how would you say, how can an individual start a conversation about their sexuality in a relationship without it, I guess, causing problems?
Yeah. That is a very, I mean, for that topic to be the one we end on in a couple of minutes, it's a very difficult one.
Right. It's a big one.
Yeah, it's very big. I mean, I have an entire book on the communication aspect through Dirty Talk, so or entire course. But yes, so I mean, if we look at this from the man's perspective here, there needs to be a few things in place, and one of the most important things is that you must create an environment where there is that trust and there is that comfort. So a woman really should never feel judgment from you in that area. That is the biggest mistake that men make in this sense. Because women, they are very sensitive to the image that they have. They really, really don't want to be labeled as a slut or a whore or anything like that. She must know that she can trust you, and that you will never judge her. You won't judge her for her earlier years before she met you and that sort of thing. So that's the foundation. That's where you must begin. But then, yeah, it's very tricky because what we're talking about here is a big concept. So for example, I am not one to recommend just sitting down and throwing out your fantasy or your idea like that, because when you throw out a big idea like that, it often comes with a lot of preconceived notions inside your partner's head, where I much prefer to explore things in a very, very slow and gentle pace and introduce things very slowly with good communication, because there might be something someone thinks the thing in their head, they're like, I would never ever want to do that or explore that, but if you approach it gently and with good communication, introducing just a little bit by little bit rather than the whole enchilada at once, then the person thinks, oh, okay, this is not the thing I had in my mind. This is not this, I don't know, whatever, gross or demeaning, or it doesn't have to be those things, but just those words in your head. So, but like I said, that is a very big discussion on how to go about doing that with good communication and in a good way,
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure we could do an entire episode on that, maybe for episode 2.
Yeah, sure.
And but so with that said, we have to end it, and so but before we do that, I want you to let the listeners know, where can they find you?
Sure. If they go to just, I'm not on YouTube anymore, so they can find my stuff at donofdesire.com. And if they just scroll down that page a little bit, they can, all my videos were taken off YouTube, but I have a collection, 6 of those that I'm giving away for free for anyone who dares to put their email on my list. They can get access to 6 of some of my most popular videos. Take it for a test run. All I ask of them is that they put the lessons to practice and see for themselves the results. Don't put faith into what I say. Just try what I'm teaching, see if it works for you and if it improves your relationships and your sex life, and then as an extension, your life.
Awesome. And thank you for this, for taking the time and wanting to speak with me, and despite my preconceived assumptions of who you are.
No problem, Jonathan. Yeah, I'm happy to speak to you. It was a good conversation.